Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sweat here on a beautiful Sunday morning, Week 13. Steve Buchanan, Josh Applebaum. We are here live on DraftKings Network and VSiN. It's Sunday, so you know that it is time for the pre-game power-up, getting you set all the way up to kickoff here. We've got 2 hours of bets and plays leading you up to the Lombardi line starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. So what do we got coming up here on the show, Josh? Let's take a little peek over there on the big board. We're going to get you guys propped up, giving some of our best props for today. We're going to do a little bit DFS Price Check, helping make a $1 million lineup. That would be a beautiful thing there, Josh. And then coaching hot seat. Who needs a win today? One of those on the hot seat is probably going to get a win today. Chargers going up against the Patriots.
Line's coming back down to the Pats, Steve.
Oh,
Get
Josh,
ready.
don't even
We got
start.
some weather as well.
Boy, what is this? Minute 30 seconds into the show,
yeah.
and Josh is already on his BS. All right, let's start getting into some of the games here for this Week 13. Let's start with the Broncos and Texans here, Josh. One of the hottest teams in the NFL right now, not something I thought I'd be saying, are the Denver Broncos on a 5-game winning streak right now going up against the Texans. This sounds like this is going to be something that is right in your wheelhouse when it comes to all your systems, because we got a very popular dog on this one here. Denver is a 3-point dog in this one. Houston is a favorite in this one. Houston is actually 0-4 ATS as a favorite so far this season, failing to cover by an average of 4.6 points. But however, the last 2 games that they were favorites, they failed to cover by half a point. So they were killed by the hook there. What are your feelings in this one here? Who do you like? Which side are you taking for this one?
So, Steve, I think you set it up very well. Early in the week, I was thinking this was going to be Houston play, because obviously the Broncos are playing well. They've won 5 straight. They've turned it around. They've looked really good over the last month or so. And then you're saying, hey, we're going to go on the road to Houston, and Houston's a favorite, -3. And early in the week, it got up to -3.5. So I'm saying, just as you mentioned, let's fade a trendy dog. Let's go with Houston here. But I think one thing that's important when you're betting the NFL is don't get locked into a bet too early in the week. I know it's a kind of a conundrum sometimes, because on the one hand, you want to bet something early, get closing line value, get a good number. But also, if you're a data person like me, sometimes early in the week, things can change. You don't want to be locked into something too early and then have a bad number. So what I'm getting at here, Steve, is I'm actually kind of leaning back the other way with the Broncos now at this point.
Wow.
That 3.5 got down to 3. These bet splits have changed quite a bit. You're right. Broncos are a little popular, 56% of bets, but they're getting 72% of money. So that has been a big change here recently. Also, look at Russell Wilson in this spot as a dog. He's been great both with the Seahawks and with Denver, even though he's only been in Denver a short minute here. Wilson as a dog, 34-17 against the spread, 67%. He's covering 2/3 of games as a dog. You also look at these short road dogs getting 3 points or less. They're 55% against the spread since 2019. And I'm going to put this in kind of the rookie coach quarterback versus the veteran coach quarterback angle here. You can't get the hook anymore. I think if you really want to get Denver, I'd wait this thing out. There are some books that are -3, -115 to Houston. So hold out for the hook. You could consider buying it up. But again, my opinions change on this game. Houston looked sharp early in the week. It's come back to Denver. I got the hook on the 3.5. I'd hold out for the hook, see if it comes back before game time. I'm going to go Denver. Where are you going in this one?
I do like the Texans in this spot here as -3. I did mention, kind of going against what I just stated here. They're 0-4 ATS as a favorite. But when you look at who Denver has beaten over the past few weeks, it feels like some pretty average at best teams. I mean, obviously that win against the Chiefs was very impressive. But then you got the Packers, you got the Bills, who, were a team that we've talked about, probably not even going to be making the playoffs at this point. The Vikings, who have been, okay. I just feel like the Texans are probably the toughest task that Denver has faced since they faced the Chiefs at that point. So I do like this spot for the Texans. I think defensively, they're actually a lot better team than people give them credit for. They just got Stingley Jr. back in the secondary there a couple weeks ago. I think this is a solid spot here for the Texans. Let's move on to the highest projected scoring game of the week. That is the Dolphins and Commanders. I don't know if I want to lay 8.5 for the Commanders, even though it's a huge number here, because I really feel like the Dolphins should stomp this team. But this has come down from yesterday.
It has.
This was at 9.5 yesterday. It's at 8.5 now. I would be okay with taking, Miami at 8.5 here. I also like the over in this one at 49.5. I know this is a huge number, and in this modern day NFL, overs have not been anyone's friend when we're betting on the over at this point here. But what are your thoughts here? Because this has been a pretty big line move since from yesterday.
Yeah. So Steve, one of the great things I like about working on on the weekends on the sweat is that we can kind of preview games on a Saturday, kind of have our opinion of it, where does it go next, and then the next day we come in back to work and we can have some, kind of some answers here to where it goes. So to your point, we were doing the show yesterday, we were talking about this huge line for the Dolphins. They're sitting at 9.5. Anytime you get close to a key number, a hook or a half point away from a key number, I always say to myself, hey, are we going to get to that key number, or are we going to go through it? Are we going to come back? So to your point, I think if you're playing the Commanders, obviously you missed the 9.5, but the line is coming back toward Washington. Now, this thing opened as low as, I think it was like -7, Steve, early opener here, look ahead. To your point, again, almost got to 10, but it never got to 10. That's what's notable to me. Wise guys who are maybe waiting for that key number never got it, and they said, hey, 9.5 might be our best number, bringing it back down to 9 at this point. It's a huge public play. The Dolphins are getting upwards of 80% of bets.
Yeah.
I can't take Miami just because they're super popular and the line's coming away from them late. And the Commanders would match one system, a dog off a blowout loss of 20 points or more. Remember, they got rolled on Thanksgiving against Dallas. Teams in that spot are 101-63 against the spread, 62% since 2018. You do have a one-day rest advantage, Thursday versus Friday. So I know it's a long-winded answer of saying I would kind of lean Commanders here in this one, believe it or not. Maybe get a backdoor cover, but this is a no play for me. I can't be on the public side of Miami, and I do want to respect that late move back toward Washington.
We're not going to agree here on the sides, but I think we both can agree. Do you like the over in this game? Because I do like the over 49.5.
It is rising, but there's one angle here, Steve. When the total's 49 or more, the under is 11-2 this year.
Yeah, it's probably
that scares me.
It is
but
pretty
to your point,
wild.
it has risen. Yes.
Yeah, and that Commander secondary has just been absolutely abysmal. Let's talk about this Lions and Saints game here. Talking about, I don't really like either side here. I think the Lions have been in a weird spot while Goff has been kind of struggling against better teams lately. If there is one conviction I do have, I love the under in this one. I was talking to you about this yesterday. I know the Lions have been one of the top teams of going over. They're 7-4 going to the over, covering by just over 4 points. Chris Olave is going to be active for the Saints. That does make a bit of a difference here, but they are just missing so many key guys in that offense. No Michael Thomas, no Raheem Shaheed. And then you have a Detroit team that is very, very good against the run. So does that eliminate Alvin Kamara? So are you really kind of basically relying upon Olave and then, who after that? Like, if they really don't have that bona fide wide receiver number 2 going here today. 47 just feels like a ton of points for these two offenses.
It does, and I think it got to 47.5 and came back down a bit. So to your point, with a hook on the 47, that's going to be your best play to the under. To me, it's a teaser play on New Orleans. I actually like teasing up the Saints in this spot. Anytime, Steve, you get a dog at 4.5, immediately I think of taking them to 10.5.
Sure.
Because you're going to go through 7, you're going to go through 10. That's the Wong teaser, the way pros tend to approach these teaser opportunities. Now, the public, interestingly, will not quit Detroit. Well, for whatever reason, they love this team. Obviously, they've made huge strides the last couple of years, but they've disappointed recently. They barely came back against the Bears. You lose on Thanksgiving. Something's up with Detroit right now. Now, the line did go to the Detroit Lions. They opened -3, Steve. They're up to 4.5, but they're also getting 81% of bets. I mean, that's a big public play here. So I think, if anything, it's a desperation spot for the Saints. They've lost 2 straight. That division's getting a little bit tighter. I think you actually take the Saints up 4.5 to 10.5, and I'll pair that with the Steelers 6.5 down to a half point against Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's a solid teaser play there. Obviously, I'm a big teaser guy. I love playing teasers. I do actually like that one there. Let's talk about the most abysmal game on this slate.
You can't wait to watch this one. You're going to stand in the rain and root for Zappy, aren't you?
This is why I watch Red Zone, so I have to watch BS like this. Chargers and Patriots. Now, I have been a big proponent that I don't give a crap about weather. Especially when you talk about, it's going to be misting, like you go through that thing at Disney World in Florida and the mist is coming down. Like, you worry about stuff like that.
But what did you say to me when we walked in?
But this is actually like legit steady rain that's going to be falling all throughout the day. So this is something that I'm interested in. So I'm taking the under in this one here because we're going to be getting the rain in this one. And then you got Bailey Zappi, Malik Cunningham, whatever they're going to throw out there, disaster. Nothing is going to work for this Patriots offense at this point. And then the Chargers. For as many points as the Chargers put up week in and week out, they are 3-8 to the over this season while averaging 24.4 points per game. It's absolutely crazy. This is the lowest over-under that the Chargers have faced all season long. The previous lowest that they've seen was 41. All other games have been 44 or higher. So now we're getting a game at an over-under of 39 in a league where the under is hitting 59% of the time.
I'm right there with you on the total here. I got under 40.5. Our producer, Drew, got a great number, 41.5.
Nice job, Drew.
I'd still take it 39.5 if you can find that hook here. A lot of books are at 39. But to me, it's an under bet. We saw this thing fall open as high as 41.5. Now, again, now down to 39, 39.5. Weather's going to be an issue here. Steady rain, a little bit of wind. Both these teams 8-3 to the under. Bill Vinovich, who's going to be the lead ref here, he's 61% to the under historically. But also, when the total falls at least a half point, the under 62%. When it's sub 40, it's as high as, I think, 67%. So a lot of angles here. Low scoring game. Pats don't have a lot of offensive players. We all know that. But I'll tell you this, I'm a little interested in the Patriots and the points here. I know you're going to throw open your mouth right now.
You're just a sick human being.
This reminds me a lot of Georgia-Alabama yesterday. If you guys remember, Georgia opened, I saw them move, 3.5 up to 6. When they got to 6, they came back down. Same thing here. You had Chargers open minus 3.5. They got up to 6. Again, Belichick's never going to come out and say he's starting Zappe, but we think it's going to be Zappe. He got most of the reps here. Once it got to 6, those books are coming back down here, Steve. This line is down to 5.5, 5. It's not a love for the Patriots, but it is kind of a bet against the Chargers. I don't want to lay this many points with LA, even with going up against the Patriots here. So give me the under, and I do lean the points with the Pats.
What's it going to take for you to stop betting this team? Because I feel like you just don't stop. You just continuously hammer this team, and you lose every time.
Well, I've been betting against them recently.
Great. One week?
I took the 4.5 with the Giants against them last week. But, Steve, if you don't know me by now, I got to respect the market. I go with the moves. But to your point, this is a team that I'm actually, as a fan, rooting to lose to get a better draft pick.
All right, we're going to get to the rest of these 1 p.m. games here later in the show. Coming up next, we're going to be playing a little bit of high or low on the sweat here. A little NFL. Can the Bijan Robinson get it going against the Jets? We'll find out here in the next segment.
watching DraftKings Network's Sunday pregame power-up.
By the legend, Brent Musburger taking us. You are watching The Sweat, part of the pregame power-up on VSiN and DraftKings Network. The Lombardi line is up next at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by the legend, Mr. Brent Musburger, taking us up to kickoff. Let's keep sweating with some high or low. So, Steve, keeping on this trend here, breaking down all these 1 o'clock games, early starts. Let's go to another one here. I mentioned this one as a teaser opportunity. Steelers and Cardinals. This game opened with the Steelers listed around a -3.5 favorite. We've seen the Steelers get up all the way to -6.5. Public's relatively split, 53% of bets, 60% of money is going with the Cardinals, with the Steelers. Obviously, this is kind of a bet against the Cardinals just because how poorly they've played all year.
Right.
But Kyler Murray, I'll give this to you, Steve. As a dog, he's 22-12 against the spread, 65%. And this would also be a system match dog off a blowout loss. Those teams are 62% ATS since 2018. Remember, they got rolled by the Rams last week, 37-14. So are you comfortable still playing this 6.5 with the Steelers? Are you going to tease them down? Are you going to maybe even entertain a play here on the Cardinals? What's your take on Steelers-Cardinals today?
Yeah, this is a game, honestly, I don't have much of a feel for at all. Like, I'm not comfortable laying the 6.5 with the Steelers at this point because, like, I don't know what this team's identity is at this point, right? Like, obviously, we saw a much better performance from this offense post Matt Canada. We saw, a lot from Pat Fryermuth last week, and that's actually a play I do like in this one, is for him to go over 3.5 receptions in this game at -105. Like, I know this feels like probably an overreaction because he had such a blow-up game last week, 9 catches for 120 yards. That is so unlike anything that we've seen from Pat Fryermuth. But if this is how the Steelers offense is going to operate and kind of throw in more, in between the numbers in the middle of the field there, then I do feel comfortable with Fryermuth at this low line at 3.5. One thing you got to remember too, the Cardinals just got absolutely ripped apart by Tyler Higbee last week. I think he had 2 touchdowns, a number of catches in that game. So give me Pat Fryermuth to go over 3.5. But I do like what you did there in the last segment, teasing the Steelers down. That would I'd be more comfortable taking, but 6.5, I honestly do not like either side in this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Steve. Again, you're laying the 6.5. You're getting the worst of the number here at this point. To me, it's a great teaser play. Also, could be a little bit more higher scoring. It did rise 39.5 up to 41, even though Steelers, I believe, are 9-2 to the under on the year. Let's keep cruising here, Steve. Colts and Titans. This one is interesting because it's basically a pick'em. It really hasn't moved at all much during the week. It opened around a pick'em price. Now, at one point early in the week, we did see the Colts get up to -2.5. It never really got to 3. Any books that did go to 3 immediately came back down. But over the last 24 to 48 hours, we have seen this line get down to Colts -1. So it does look like there is some buyback here on the Titans, getting the points at home. Colts are the public play, getting 62% of bets, but late move is here back toward the Titans. Vrabel as a dog, always got to mention this. It's something you want to be aware of. There are certain coaches that just are good motivators and do well when they're in that underdog role. You always think of Mike Tomlin, but Vrabel as well. He's 57% against the spread in his career as a dog. Divisional matchup. Tennessee's getting a point here, Steve, on a neutral site. What is this, a -4, -3 here for the Colts?
Sure.
What's your take on this game? Any angle here to buy low on the Colts, or are you with the late move going here to Tennessee?
I think I would probably lean on Tennessee in this one here. I mean, matchup-wise, this is actually like a good spot for Gardner Minshew because the Titans secondary has been putrid all season long. That being said, I just have not liked what I've seen from Gardner Minshew over the past couple of weeks. Like, we've mentioned this on the show before. This is such a classic Gardner Minshew mentality. Like, he starts off when he comes in relief, looks great. Then as you get more and more of him as the season goes on, the quality of play just seems to go down. And like him turning over the ball, not taking good care of the ball, always gives me some pause here, even in a good matchup here against a Titans secondary that has been very, very beatable. Obviously, the Colts are going to be without Jonathan Taylor. This is a huge spot for Zach Moss. This is a team that he absolutely dismantled earlier in the season. That was the game that Jonathan Taylor came back, and we saw Zach Moss have his biggest game of the year. I'm not expecting a repeat performance, but I think we're still looking at a spot where Moss can easily go over his rushing yards in this game. So I would be leaning on the Titans in this one, but I do like, obviously, the Zach Moss props. He's going to be very popular in DFS. We're going to talk about that later in the show, but my lean here is the Titans because, again, it's basically a coin flip at this rate.
I'm with you, and again, respecting that late move back to Tennessee, I'd lean Titans here as well. Gardner Minshew, by the way, if you look at his, you mentioned his turnovers here. He's thrown a pick in 2 straight games.
Yeah.
He's thrown a pick in, 5 of his last 6, 6 of his last 7, something like that. But what was noticeable to me, on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, for Gardner Minshew to throw a pick, you're getting plus money, plus 114. The under on Minshew, under a half, is minus 145. So maybe today's the day he has a clean game, but if you want to bank on Minshew turning it over, you got plus money right there, Steve. So consider that one. Let's keep on cruising. This is your second favorite game of the day after the Patriots game. Falcons and the Jets.
Yeah.
I mean, this game right here is going to set back the NFL about 35 years. This one is interesting to me, though. You're going to be so disgusted by my lean.
Oh, don't even.
It is. It's the Jets.
You are.
I lean Jets.
You're betting on the Patriots and the Jets today. Is that what I'm gathering?
That you're gathering. You're
You
picking
are
it
a
up,
sick
and you're
human.
gathering it perfectly, Steve. But here's what I would say.
Okay.
A couple things going on right now. The public is all over Atlanta. They're getting 67% of bets. Lesser of two evils. Play Atlanta, more star players, yada, yada, yada. Public's done with the Jets. However, this game opened around -2. Atlanta, it got up to -3. There's been a lot of buyback on the Jets, 3 down to 2. Now, I don't love the Jets enough to just take the 2, but I think if you tease them up, 2 to 8, go through some key numbers. My angle here is that it's going to be a super low total here. It's 33. It opened at 36. So in a low-scoring game where you can tease it up, and this is what, and again, pros like to do is teasing up dogs in low-total games because there's less variance. But Jets would be a dog off a blowout. That's a system match, 62%. And then Desmond Ridder. It's not that I love the Jets. Here, Steve, it said I don't believe in Ridder. He's 6-1 straight up at home. He's 1-4 on the road. He is really Jekyll and Hyde home road. You also have a rest versus tired. Jets played Black Friday. Obviously, the Falcons here played on Sunday. So I'd tease up the Jets, and there is going to be some weather, rainy, windy. A lot of that is going to check all the East Coast games you're betting today for weather. Steve, how crazy am I to tease up the Jets from 2 to 8?
I mean,
what do you think?
I mean, sure.
Does Atlanta have enough offense to win by 9 or more? That's my question.
I mean, sure. I mean, in a game that has a total of 33 points, getting
Cover
8
up the names
points.
of the teams. Does that change your opinion at all? From a betting perspective.
I'm not a sick human like you. I don't want to tease any side on this one. But again, when you're getting 8 points on a game total of 33 points, obviously that is certainly the move there. I'm still taking the under in this game, even with that 33 points. I mean, we have rain in this one, legitimate rain, not the misty stuff at Disney World, a legit rain in this game here. New York, coming into this game, 5 straight games going under until they went over last week against Miami. But the only reason that game went over is because Miami supplied 34 of the 40 points needed to go over in that game there. The Jets, over the last 5 games, are averaging 10 points per game. This Atlanta defense is legit. We talk about some of the better defenses in the league. We talk about Dallas. We talk about, well, not last week, but we talk about Dallas. We talk about the Ravens. The Atlanta Falcons should be there too as well. They are great against the run. They're great against the pass. What is Tim Boyle going to do? What that he hasn't done already here? And Atlanta wants to run the ball. They finally realize that Bijan Robinson is on the team. They can actually do something with Bijan Robinson, who has 50 carries over the last 3 weeks. They're going to want to run the ball. This is going to be a slow-paced game. Give me under 33.
I'm with you there, Steven. By the way, if you look at Desmond Ridder, he's 10-3 to the under in his career. He's used to these lower scoring games. I'm with you on the under. Let's play a little higher low, though.
Yeah.
Here, Steve, mentioning the star running back for the Atlanta Falcons here, Bijan Robinson. His prop right now in terms of rushing, 59.5 yesterday. Yeah. It's down to 58.5, so it's gone down a little bit here. It is juiced up over -125. Now, credit to you. For the last few weeks, I've been saying Jets have a really good defense, but if you look at the numbers, they're not as good as they were the last couple of years.
Horrible.
The Jets are allowing 140 rushing yards per game. That is 31st in the NFL. I had to double check that. It's totally true. Yeah. I didn't expect that. Quinnen Williams, you think they got this stout defense. Mosley, the linebacking core. No, they give up a lot on the ground. Bijan has run for 90 yards or more in his last 2 games. Is this a situation here where it's too low and you're going to take the over? Can Bijan get you 59 yards today on the ground?
Yeah, I'm with you. And we talked about it too. Like the last 2 weeks, 38 carries for Bijan Robinson, 186 rushing yards, 4.8 yards per carry on those attempts there. And he's totally out-touched Algier, which is something that people have been calling for weeks now. Over the past 2 weeks, he has out-touched Tyler Algier, 42-20 in those 2 games. You mentioned here how the Jets have really been susceptible to the run. So I think this is a huge spot here for Bijan Robinson, especially with the weather implications that I do not usually like going into, but this is a legitimate case where they should be running the ball a lot with the weather, with the rain that's going to be happening in New York here today. So I do like Bijan to go over that number today.
I'm with you on that one, Steve. One more for you. Austin Eckler. Now he's coming to the rain, the wind, all the elements here at Gillette Stadium today. His rushing prop is 51.5. But it's really juiced up under -120. Aside from the bad weather, the Patriots actually have a pretty good defense this year. The numbers bear it out. They have the 7th best Rushing defense, they're only giving up 94 yards per game. To me, it's an angle to take the under on Eckler, 51.5. I like looking at juiced up props on kind of big name players. So public thinks Eckler. To me, Eckler, if you target him like both rushing and receiving, you can kind of combine the best of both worlds because he's a dual threat. But what do you think, Steve? Are you going under Eckler, 51.5 in the rain at Gillette today?
It's tough too because weather should really skew how the game plan is going to play out here for the Chargers. Like, they are a pass-heavy team first, but with that weather going today, are they going to be running the ball more? Evan Silva pointed this out. According to Next Gen Stats, Eckler's actually been one of the slowest running backs in the league so far this season. This is only a number he's gone over in 3 of the 8 games that he played. Remember, he had that high ankle sprain, missed about 4 or 5 games there. He's averaging 14 carries per game, but he's just not being efficient with those carries. Like, right now, he's averaging the least amount of yards after contact in his career, only 2.6. This is someone who in the prime of his career was averaging about 3.5 yards after contact in the NFL. This is the lowest of his career at this point right now. So I can't trust Eckler even with these conditions that we're going to have going today in New England.
I'm right there with you, Steve. So we're going to continue here on The Sweat. We're going to get to the 4 o'clock games, including the biggest game of the day. Is it an NFC Championship preview? The 49ers and the Eagles next on The Sweat.
Welcome back here to the Sweat, part of the pregame power-up here on DraftKings Network. And VSiN, Steve Buchanan, Josh Applebaum. We're going to be joined by Pierce Dietrich on this schedule on this show as we start talking about the 4 p.m. schedule for today. Look at Pierce looking dapper as usual. We got two behemoths going in the 4 o'clock hour here. Some say this is going to be the NFC Championship preview, but we got the Niners, we got the Eagles. You see the tail of the tape there, the stats for these three teams. Pierce, let's start with you here. The Niners are 3-point favorites in this one. We have an over-under of 47.5. But the interesting part about this, Pierce, this is a rare opportunity to get the Eagles as underdogs this season.
I'm glad you're in a good mood, Steve, and let me see if I can ruin it.
Yeah, that'll change.
Usually my goal on here is to see if I can give you an aneurysm live on the air. My ump stats from the past to put you on statins. So here we go. Today is the Widowmaker. Philly to punt more than the Niners at plus 110. Both these teams punt at a 3.3 rate, but over the last 3 games, Philadelphia is punting 5.7 times per game. I like what the 49ers have done coming out of the bye. I really believe in this defense. I think the 49ers are going to be aggressive on first and second down, and they're going to stay out of those third and short, which kill most teams when they're facing the tush-push, and the Eagles have a lot of faith in the 49ers defense. Philly punting more today at plus 110.
Did you just... We're talking about the biggest game on this slate, which side that we like. We bring this guy on air to join us.
Yep. Just to trigger you.
Did he just give us a punt bet?
Well, it tells you he does his research. And Pierce, I want to give you some credit because when I was watching that Cowboys game, I kept thinking of you because I remember last week you said the Cowboys were due for a letdown. They were due for a game where they were going to blow it. And I was really, really hoping that the Seahawks would win that game on the money line. Either way, they covered the numbers. So shout out to you, Pierce. But in this one, guys.
Are you guys done?
Yeah, I just had to give credit where credit's due. Give me the 49ers in this game, guys. This one is really interesting to me. It's a classic pros versus Joes game. This is kind of a phrase you're going to hear a lot in the betting market. What does it actually mean? It means that basically the public is all over one side, but a lot of the respected pro bettors are on the opposite side. So public's all over Eagles. I don't blame the public. Eagles have been great, 10-1. They keep coming back in all these games. They're down in the second half. A little more than 60% of bets on Philadelphia. But what has the line done? The line has only gone one way for this game, all toward San Francisco. It opened around a pick'em. You're all the way up to San Francisco -3. They're only getting 40% of bets, but 60% of the money. This is a fade the trendy dog play, guys, here. I'm going to bet against the Eagles. It's also a big rest versus tired. You know, the 49ers are rested. They played Thanksgiving. You saw the Eagles play on Sunday, and they had to go to basically a 5th quarter in a really tough game there against the Bills. Here's the thing, though. I'm not laying a -3 with San Francisco. I'll go money line here because 3 is the most common key number. If San Fran wins by 3, I don't want to push my bet. I want to win my bet. I'm going money line here. Give me San Fran in a pro versus Joe game.
Yeah, this is a big spot here for the San Francisco receivers, too. Like, the Eagles have been one of the worst teams in the secondary here, so we can see big stuff from Brandon Ayuk, for George Kittle. Also a positive for Christian McCaffrey. No Zach Cunningham, of course, and Fletcher Cox questionable for this game as well. I don't know if we have a solidified status on him for this game here, but San Francisco, only the 3rd time that they've been 3-point favorites or shorter. One of them was in Week 1 against the Steelers, where they were shorter than a 3-point favorite. That was very odd. How did that even happen? And then against Jacksonville. So I'm with you guys here. I think the Niners are the play here, but I do like your money line call there because there's obviously a very high chance that we could see a push here. From a behemoth game to a minuscule game, let's go to the Browns and the Rams. The Rams are -4 favorites in this one here. We have an over-under of 40.5. Probably going to be an ugly game here. For the Browns, we have the returning Joe Flacco under center for this one as DTR is in the concussion protocol. Matt Stafford coming off a big game here. Josh, where are you leaning in this one?
So I think it's an obvious play, but I do lean Rams in this one. Again, it's all about Flacco to me. What are you going to get out of Flacco? You know, he used to be quote-unquote elite back in the day. Give him his credit. He won his Super Bowl. But when you're coming off the couch and now you have to go, play a game here against the Rams, I mean, you have obviously Aaron Donald, facing you here. I think it's just a tough spot here to back the Browns. Now, the line has gone to the Rams. The Rams open -1. Short number here. They're all the way up to -4. They're getting 62% bets, almost 70% of the money. non-conference favorites. That's one thing I look at. Two teams, two different conferences, take the favorite just because of the lack of familiarity benefits the better team. Now, it's a money line play for me. It's a little high, like minus 190. I really don't like to go that high. On the off chance Cleveland maybe plays good defense and Flacco plays well and keeps it close, I think that's what you're banking on here. But to me, it's a Rams play. The more I think about it, I may even lay the 4. I just don't know what to expect out of Flacco. And Rams are playing a little bit better here recently.
All right, Pierce, time to redeem yourself. What are you going to go on this one? Like 2 safeties to be scored or something?
No, I will give you a prop bet, but the Rams laying the points seems to be the place to go, especially with the Browns having several injuries on defense. Even if their star defensive backs and Garrett are able to go, I still don't think they're going to be at 100%. You're really going to need them with the way that the offense is going to set up with Joe Flacco. And Flacco has come off the bench several times or off the couch several times over the last couple seasons, and he really hasn't done much. I think what we can expect from Flacco and what we should expect is they hand the ball off a lot. I don't know why they aren't running as much as they should. Maybe after last week's terrible play calling, the Browns will decide, hey, let's give the ball to Mr. Ford a little bit more. And that's where I would look, take the over on rushing yards for Ford at 50.5. Flacco shouldn't be tossing the ball around the field. The Browns' defense is banged up. You want to try to keep them off the field, control the time of possession. And so just run the ball with the guy who's averaging 6 yards per carry on 145 carries. Right. What are you doing, Browns? Feed him the ball, take the over on Ford, and hope the Browns do the right thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Ford thing, too, and I mentioned this with you yesterday. Yep. Looking at some stats from last year, because you remember Flacco was playing last year with the Jets. Amongst active quarterbacks, he targeted the running back position the 3rd highest rate than any other quarterback in the league. The only 2 quarterbacks that have been targeting the running back position more are Brock Purdy, for obvious reasons, with Christian McCaffrey, and Russell Wilson. And Rams are allowing just under 5 receptions to the running back position per game this year. So we have Jerome Ford, who has a reception prop set at 2.5. So I think that's a pretty good number to go over in this one here, because like we mentioned, Flacco just coming into this game, very fresh, coming off the couch here. Tight ends, running backs, those feel like viable things that you can target for overs on receptions, because that's just, I would think that's how the game script would go, especially with them playing from behind if the Rams are going to be indeed covering this 4-point spread.
Can I throw one more at you?
Yeah, of course.
Our buddy Njoku. How many times this guy got to hit his props until we keep just riding him every single week? But right now he's 45.5 receiving yards, minus 115 over. Again, out of just respect for all these tickets he's cashed for us, and Njoku could be a play too.
Yeah, with DTR under center, he had 24 targets in those 2 games. Don't know if he's going to get those type of targets with Joe Flacco, but Njoku has been obviously a huge part of this Browns offense, specifically over the past 2 weeks. All right, last game here in the 4 o'clock window, we got the Panthers and the Buccaneers. We have a 3-point spread here in favor of the Buccaneers. Really low total in this one, 36.5. I think this has a lot to do with the inept offense of the Panthers here. We talked about this yesterday, how just Bryce Young can't get anything going, but to no fault of his own. When you're giving him Adam Thielen as your number 1 target, when you're giving him a razor-thin offensive line, what do you expect this guy to do? Obviously, a lot of coaching changes going on with the Panthers. Pierce, what are your feelings on this one here? Are you just going to be riding the favorite, or is this going to be something where the Panthers can actually come through and cover a spread?
I would actually look at the under. I know the under is really low, and people see these numbers and they try to stay away, but both these offenses, Baker Mayfield's worked some magic here or there, but this doesn't seem like a game where he's going to really need to push it that much. And the Panthers defense can play well and does set up pretty well against what the Buccaneers are going to bring to the table. And, on the Panthers offensive side, they just are an absolute mess. The bet that I would really look at is taking the team to get the first sack, and that's the Buccaneers at minus 125. Bryce Young's been sacked 40 times this year. That's the second most.
Yeah.
And then you look at what Carolina does on defense. Although they do some things well, getting to the quarterback's not one of them. Only 18 sacks in the season. That's the second fewest. So it really seems to me that you look at the game log of how many times this guy's been put on the turf. I think that you take the Buccaneers to get the first sack, you play the under. If I had to go one direction, I would take the Buccaneers to win this game money line. But it's not a game that has much of my attention at all.
Yeah, I'm not getting a lot of attention from me either. What do you think, Josh?
So I'm going to say it. There is some respected money here on Bryce Young. Again, you puke in your mouth when you hear this, but
you were talking about the Patriots today, you're talking about the Jets today, and now you're talking about the Panthers. Go ahead.
I got to respect the market, Steve. These are bets made by guys and gals much sharper than me here. So Tampa Bay opened -5.5. The line's down to 3.5. That tells me you had, believe it or not, some money here taking Carolina in the points. Rams you look in this spot, the Bucs are getting upwards of 80% of bets, yet you're seeing this adjustment toward Carolina. Only 22% bets, 51% money on Carolina. Now, with that being said, how many times do I have to bang my head against the wall? In respect, Bryce Young, I know it's not his fault, but kind of respect the Carolina Panthers. They never cover for you, 2-7-1 ATS. So to me, it's a layoff. I got to respect the move toward Carolina. I don't really like wasting my money on a team that never covers for me. But I would throw this one at you guys, over 31.5 pass attempts. It's juiced up -130 for Bryce Young. I could see him throwing a lot. You look at just his box scores here recently, 31, 29, 38, 39, 38, 41. A lot of attempts here. Maybe you're trailing. That could be a place to look. Carolina's getting money. I don't know if I want to put my money on it, though. They just never cover.
Yeah, I will say, though, Chris Godwin expected to play, but more closer to kickoff, we will know for sure. But Mike Evans, anytime touchdown, +160. He's got 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games here. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on the sweat. We're going to do a little NFL price check. Is Trey McBride another must roster this week? His tight end opponent this week, Pat Fryermuth, might have something to say about that. Welcome back here to the sweat part of the Sunday pregame power-up here on DraftKings Network and VSiN. Michael Lombardi coming up next at 10 a.m. Eastern. Let's do a little price check here. Let's build some daily fantasy lines. We talked about a lot of betting things that we can do here, but what about some daily fantasy? Let's bring in two of our gurus. I'll say 1.5 because Pierce is here. We're going to talk about Jeff Ulrich. We're going to talk to Pierce Dietrich here and build some lineups here. Gentlemen, how are we doing here this morning?
Fabulous, buddy. Glad to see you on the desk. Glad Emerson's on holiday. Well, he's not on holiday. He's gone. But yeah, glad to see you, man.
All right, let's start off here with the quarterback position. Pierce, I'll start with you here because I feel like you're going to give an obscure quarterback here. But coming into this day, right now it's looking like the most owned quarterback on the slate is going to be Russell Wilson in that game against the Texans. Is that who you're going to, or are you going to surprise me and go a different route here?
Yeah, I'll go with Russell Wilson.
Of course.
He does feel slightly obscure, doesn't he? He's having a really solid season, and it's kind of just being brushed under the rug like the dust that he is. But, you look at the stats, and all but one game, he scored 14 DKFP. I mean, he's not really rocking the world, but he's not letting people down. He's using his legs a little bit. He's rushed for over 20 yards in 6 to 7 of the last games, over 30 rushing yards in 5 of the last 7, so you have that upside. And he's getting touchdowns. I don't know if the yards are going to make you happy, but with 20 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions, you kind of like that. And you like that his defense is giving the ball, giving him short fields. This is a game where he can put points on the board. Houston's no pushover, but they did allow over 300 passing yards to Lawrence last week. So can't believe I'm suggesting Russell Wilson. I am Wilson hater number 1, but yep, that's where I'm going.
Jeff, at least for me, I feel like people are not giving enough respect to the Houston Texans secondary. I feel like they're actually a lot better than people give them credit for. Like, I like Brock Purdy, and obviously one of the more popular games on the slate here, but Purdy is coming with lower ownership, slightly more expensive price here than Wilson.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would probably lean Brock Purdy if I was just picking between those two. But the Houston secondary has regressed a little bit. You don't know if it's just game flow, just situational. They do have a lot of talent. I could see them picking it up, but Houston puts a lot of pressure on their opponents. So I think Russell Wilson's pass attempts probably go up, but I would still lean Brock Purdy here. You look at Brock Purdy, 4 games with 23 or more DK fantasy points already, going up against an Eagles secondary that just allows a ton of big plays. Brock Purdy leads the league in EPA per play among all quarterbacks. Yeah. He's basically the most efficient quarterback in the league at this point. If you look at all the advanced stats, and you can say, oh, it's a product of Shanahan's system, whatever. He's in Shanahan's system against a terrible secondary this week. So who cares? Like, all that argument nonsense for DFS, it's just out the window. He's 6,100. He's less than Jared Goff, who's been a turnover machine of late. He's less than Kyler Murray, maybe playing in a rainy game and kind of just stinks right now and doesn't have any receivers. Brock Purdy's underpriced for this situation. I think San Francisco will be able to put up points. Buffalo put up points. Josh Allen put up 300-plus yards. Brock Purdy's put up multiple 300-yard games already. I think he's in a really good spot to succeed this week. At 6,100, he's just too cheap.
All right, let's talk about the running back position here. And pricing already came out for this week, and then we heard that Jonathan Taylor was going to be missing the next 2 games. That left Zach Moss at 4,600 in a game where he absolutely smashed that run defense to begin with earlier in the season against the Titans. So Zach Moss is going to be by far the highest owned player on this slate. Is that the route you're going to, Jeff, or are you going in a different direction? Because I feel like Moss is your obvious cash game play, but he's a very interesting tournament fade this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think creating tournament lineups, there's 2 ways to look at it. I would personally, if you're making multiple lineups, I would still want some exposure to Zach Moss. We're not talking about like a wide receiver who's taking a step up and might see 5 targets and might convert 1 for a long touchdown. We're talking about a running back who's probably going to get 20 plus touches. These are situations that usually produce pretty good fantasy days. Even if it's not great, Zach Moss is 4,600. Yeah. So yeah, you want some exposure. Even in your tournament lineups, even at 50% ownership, you want some exposure because there's just no one really who can replicate that. Now, I would certainly make some lineups without Zach Moss as well. And if you're going to do that, I think Jaylen Warren at 5,400 is a great pivot play in that range. It's a little bit more expensive, going to cost you a little bit more, but Jaylen Warren has all the capabilities against Arizona, who's got a bottom 5 run defense. They're 28th in a success rate against the run. Jaylen Warren is one of the most explosive running backs in the league. His touches have gone up. I think Pittsburgh's absolutely going to feed him in this spot. And look, if Zach Moss only has an okay day, 12, 14 points, Jaylen Warren could absolutely get to 20 plus points, maybe even more than that against Arizona, because I think Pittsburgh's going to blow them out. But Warren's certainly a good tournament play this week, regardless of whether you're using Zach Moss alongside him or not.
Yeah, just talk about ownership difference between those two plays. We have it right now, about a 35% difference between Moss and Warren.
Yeah.
Pierce, what are you looking at running back?
Yeah, I'm going to stay with Moss. I understand the ownership angle and the game theory angle. Every article, every podcast, every YouTube show, everyone is suggesting Moss, and it makes a lot of sense. Who am I to disagree? I think it is way too cute, it is way too contrarian in GPPs and in cash games to fade Moss. I mean, this is an elite spot, and like Jeff said, this isn't just some random wide receiver that's going to step up that may or may not receive volume. The volume is going to be there because we've already seen this situation 5 times this year, and in 4 of those games, Moss came away as a top 10 running back on the day. Only once did he fail to deliver, and on one of those days, he scored the second most fantasy points. And you just flash back to, we've actually seen this exact script before when he faced Tennessee and scored 36 fantasy points. I think it's just way too cute, way too contrarian, just plain. You're kicking against the pricks, and it's not going to work out for you if you fade Moss.
Pierce, is there any reasonable way to fade Tyreek Hill going against Washington today?
Hasn't worked out very well for you this season. You're basically just going to be hoping for a Tyreek Hill injury. And, no one likes to prepare for that or hope for that. But I just don't think it's you. How do you slow him down? No one's figured it out. And he is trying to write the record book. So you've got Moss. You've got savings. There are quarterbacks that are cheap. You're probably not going to be able to get 2 with him. But, no, you got to try to jam in Hill if you can.
Jeff, it feels like a lot of lineups are going to be the same here when you kind of follow that. Okay, you start with Moss, then you have the room to pay up for Tyreek Hill, and then you kind of create the rest. How do you differentiate your lineups? Because that feels like that's going to be how the majority of lineups are going to start today at wide receiver.
Yeah, look, I mean, if you want to differentiate, I think a good way to do it is, I mean, again, if the points for the Colts are not going to Zach Moss, might go to Michael Pittman or Josh Downs. So that's kind of the pivot. And again, you don't need to necessarily even fade Moss if you're playing Michael Pittman, but playing them together, I mean, this Tennessee defense is bad. I mean, they're pretty much bad at everything this year. They always have a bad secondary. So Michael Pittman's in a great spot at, I believe he's 71 or 7,200. So no, 7,100. So Michael Pittman, one of the most targeted wide receivers in the league. This isn't just, again, like some random big wide receiver who might catch a touchdown. He's 7th in targets in the league. Gardner Minshew's been targeting him at a pretty insane rate of late. He's going up against a weak secondary. There's all kinds of chances here that we get like a 50-yarder from Michael Pittman. He finds the end zone once or twice. Maybe Zach Moss stays out of the end zone. Either way, playing Moss and Pittman together, I think, can differentiate a little bit. Again, staying away, this really comes down to who would you rather fade, Zach Moss or Tyreek Hill in a lot of ways. I'd probably rather fade Tyreek Hill. A lot of people are going to use them both, but if you had to fade one, I think Hill's probably the fade, just for the simple fact we could get some rain in the Miami-Washington game. Miami could just get up because Jalen Waddle scores or something like that. And then, Tyreek Hill just stays out of the end zone for a week. It's more likely that happens than Moss puts in like 8 fantasy points. So, Tyreek Hill's going to be very popular. Tyreek Hill, Zach Moss lineups are going to be very popular. I think Michael Pittman, probably a good pivot at the wide receiver range to consider.
I just think that one way to get different is to take those Eagles wide receivers. Both of those guys, Brown and Devonta Smith, projecting between 6 to 8% despite being one of the highest scoring games and more popular games, but pricing is just really crushing how to make these lineups here. Let's just quickly move over to tight end here. Obviously, George Kittle is a big option here. We got Sam Laporta back on the main slate here. He's been huge for the Lions. Where are you going at tight end here, Jeff?
I like Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints. Again, we know Michael Thomas done. Rashid Shaheed is gone. Chris Olave looks like he's going to play. Concussion questionable, but he cleared the protocol. But Juwan Johnson's been coming on, and I mean, it makes sense. He's a big body over the middle. He's an athletic tight end. Didn't have a good start to the year, got injured a bit. Taysom Hill kind of stole his lunch, but I think that the Saints have been working him in a little bit more and more. He's a big body in the red zone. I think he's almost taking over some of those Michael Thomas snaps now. Again, doesn't have a big ADOT, but he's got a really good matchup against Detroit in the Dome. Detroit doesn't necessarily defend the tight end position well. Really, they just don't defend against the pass well at all lately. I think Juwan Johnson's a pretty athletic player, and at 3,400, again, This is a spot where Detroit's favored. I mean, I think that, again, the Saints are probably going to be throwing the ball potentially 35 plus times. I can see Derek Carr potentially approaching 300 yards in this game. I think Juwan Johnson's got a really good shot of seeing 6-7 targets here and potentially going for like 50 yards and a touchdown. So 3,400, I just think for a value play, again, if you want to kind of double up on the Indianapolis Colts starters or whatever, maybe stack that San Francisco Eagles game with some of those high-priced wide receivers, I think Juwan Johnson's a really good value to get you there.
Pierce, in 2 words, give us your tight end.
Same as Jeff.
There you go.
3.
All right, that's going to do it here for Price Up, gentlemen. We appreciate you guys coming on. When we come back here, we're going to do a little propped up. We're going to be talking some prop bets here on the Sweat, part of the pregame power-up on DraftKings Network and VSiN.
Welcome back to The Sweat, part of the pregame power-up here on VSiN and DraftKings Network. Lombardi Line and Brent Musburger are coming up next, so don't go anywhere. But still, we have a couple primetime games to talk about right now, and we're also going to talk some prop bets here on the DK Sportsbook. So I'm a Post Malone fan. You know his song, Feeling Cooped Up? I'm feeling propped up. Any Posty fans out there? Just throwing that. I just got my Spotify Wrapped for 2023. Post Malone, my most listened to artist here. So anyway, you don't want to hear about that. Jeff, I want to start with you because you're the guru when it comes to these prop bets. Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love has turned it around as of late. He's playing much better. Yes. Packers, by the way, 6-point dog tonight. They have a line move in their favor. We'll get to that later. But his prop right now, 227.5. I noticed it did get down to 219.5. It is falling here as we speak. But are you going to ride Jordan Love here? What do you think about that move? And if not Love, who are you going to target for your quarterback prop today?
Yeah, the move is interesting on Jordan Love. I mean, this was, like you said, this was high 220s, like basically almost 24 hours ago. And Patrick Mahomes' prop has really fallen this game too. I think there's major weather concerns, potential snow, just cold weather. So Jordan Love is a player like, I think at this point, I would probably be looking to go over more than under, but I wouldn't say he's my favorite prop in this game either. The KC pass defense, it's just too good for me to really sort of get behind it and really like. I like to attack weaker pass defenses with my quarterback props. I like to buy low on guys against weaker pass defenses. And I think with Bryce Young, you actually have that spot this week. It's gross. I get it. I mean, Carolina, they have trouble just completing a forward pass at this point, but Bryce Young at 192.5. This is really low. You look at Tampa Bay and what they do poorly. I mean, they just defend the pass poorly. They're a funnel to the pass kind of defense. You look at their last 5 games. 4 of the quarterbacks that have gone against them in their last 5 games have passed for 250 yards or more. I think just with the new coaching staff, they're just going to try and get Bryce Young comfortable. I like going over Bryce on 192.5. Again, just love the matchup against Tampa Bay, which just loves to give up yards in the passing game.
Steve, what do you think about Jordan Love today, or is there another QB you have your eyes on?
I do like Jordan Love today. I did a lot of weather research today.
I'm proud of you, man. I am proud of you.
It's really unlike me. I know. But the snow is supposed to be done by the time kickoff comes off, so it's just going to be cold. So I'm not too worried about that. I actually found a passing total lower than what Jeff just gave, and I'm still taking the under on
Tim Boyle? Who is it?
Close.
Ritter?
Bailey Zappi.
Oh.
The Patriot bums that are taking the field today against the Los Angeles Chargers. So we haven't seen much of Zappi because obvious reasons. He's made 39 pass attempts so far this year, and he's averaging 4.1 yards per attempt. His adjusted completion percentage, which measures how his throws on target, is 55%. He's barely even hitting his targets a little more than half the time that he's throwing the ball. So now we got a bad weather game in New England. It's going to rain. They're going to run the ball. This is an abysmal total to take the under. I still think it goes under. I think he gets like 105 passing yards in this game, even against a secondary that has been as bad as the Los Angeles Chargers, which a coach who's supposed to be defensive-minded and Brandon Staley. We'll talk about him later. But give me under Bailey Zappi, 188.5.
And the Patriots are going to cover that number. Anyway, moving forward, Brock Purdy. I'll give you Brock Purdy over 251.5 passing yards. It's juiced up minus 135. He's gone over this number in 7 of his last 9 games. I think Purdy has a big game today. Moving on to running backs here. Jeff, Zach Moss. A lot of attention here, obviously, with Jonathan Taylor being hurt. His prop is 78.5 rushing yards. He's back in the number 1 spot here. Are you going to ride a big game here for Zach Moss, or is there another running back you're looking at?
Zach Moss is fine. Again, you're not getting over on the sports books. They've obviously put his totals at quite a bit higher rate. I think that one running back who still is some potential for expansion in terms of what you'd say in terms of just what he can produce and where his totals are at. I think is Kieran Williams of the Los Angeles Rams at 63.5. This total's moved up a little bit throughout the week, but even at 63.5, I would lean over here. I would also lean over on his 14.5 rush attempts. You look at the Cleveland Browns. Everyone thinks Cleveland Browns, they're such a good defense. You can't run on them. They've actually been regressing quite a bit in the second half of the season. They're only 14th in success rate against the run. They've been really bad at limiting explosive plays in the run the last few weeks. Even just like the second half of the season, we saw Jaylen Warren go for that 74-yard touchdown against them. We saw Samaje Perine really just sort of reel off some big runs against them last week. I think Kieran Williams is a guy who 56-yard run last week, had a 30-yard run back in week 6. Like, he is an explosive running back right now. Sean McVay's system getting some big plays. I really like going over on his totals here. I think the Rams are going to be able to run the ball in the spot, and I think it's going to be a close game, which again just means Williams should be in the game a lot. He played 77% of the snaps in the first half last week when the game was close.
Steve, what do you think about this one? Is Zach Moss due for a big day with no Jonathan Taylor, or is there another running back you're taking it on?
Yeah, I think they're going to, we talked about this earlier in the show. I mean, Zach Moss is definitely going to be getting the ball a lot here in that game that Jonathan Taylor did return, is when Zach Moss had his best game of the season against this Titans defense. There was one prop that I was looking to target here, and I was actually pretty surprised about the number. It's Bijan Robinson anytime touchdown is at plus 155. In this game environment where the Jets cannot defend against the run, we're getting a lot of rain in the forecast here. This just feels like a fantastic spot for Bijan to get into the end zone once again. Over the past 2 weeks, we have seen total dominance in the backfield of Bijan Robinson over Algier, which is something that we've been dying for since the season began. You use such a high draft pick, and then you're going to have this guy play second fiddle to Algier? I mean, give me a break. Over the last week, Robinson now has 3 red zone carries. Cordell Patterson had 1 last week. Where did that come from? I was surprised by that. But Algier, most importantly, had 0, which is also the number of bets I'm going to have backing the Patriots today. So Bijan Robinson to get into the end zone. I like that one a lot here. We've talked about on the show here how the Jets can be beat on the ground. This just feels like a great number for somebody who's really kind of taken over the reins as the RB1 in this offense. You're going to run against the Jets. That's what the Falcons love to do. They love to run the ball, and then even more so with how the game elements are going to be today. So give me Bijan to score a touchdown today, plus 155.
I'm with you on that one, Steve. Also, what was it 58.5 over rushing yards or 59, whatever that was?
Yeah.
Lean over in that one. Other running backs, so just throw this out there. We talked Jerome Ford, or both Steve and Pierce talked about it earlier. Looking at him over 50.5 rushing yards, it's minus 120 juice to the over. And you guys made a really good point. Flacco dumping it off. You're coming off the couch playing in an NFL game. Maybe you just want to kind of dump it off when you're getting pressured. I'll throw James Conner at you guys too. I know, Steve, I'm not going to say revenge angle, but I like the matchup here. James Conner going up against Pittsburgh. Over 57.5 rushing yards is minus 120 to the over. Pittsburgh is not very good. They're overall good defense, but they're actually 21st in rushing yards allowed, almost 120 a game. It's kind of fishy because James Conner only had 27 rushing yards last week, yet his total is double that this week, and it's juiced up over. He's gone over this number in 5 of 8 games, so I'll lean to that Conner over. Let's get to some wide receivers here. Looking at this one, Jeff, A.J. Brown, I got to start with him. He's been incredible all year long. Remember, he had that ridiculous string of 100-yard games, but that ended. He's kind of, I'm not going to say he's struggling here, but he's gone just 45 receiving yards in his last 2 games. His prop total today is 73.5 against the 49ers. Are you banking on, Jeff, a bounce-back game for A.J. Brown, or is there someone else you're looking at in the wide receiver department?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, like the A.J. Brown, there's a little bit of injury concerns a couple weeks ago as well, so you wonder if that's factoring in. I think it's more just teams are just realizing, like, hey, maybe we should cover this guy, who's getting like 2 touchdowns and 100 yards every week, so teams are scheming a little bit more there. But if I was looking at this game, there are 2 names I would go to. One, if I was going Eagles, I would definitely lean Devonta Smith. His prop has hovered in the high 50s all week. I still think it's a pretty good buy low spot. You look at the last 2 weeks for Devonta Smith, he's actually out-targeted A.J. Brown, 16 targets for him, A.J. Brown about 13. So Smith, I think in a very good spot, had a touchdown and over 60 yards against San Francisco in that conference championship game last year. Again, not huge yardage, but that was because the San Francisco 49ers couldn't throw the ball. The wide receiver I really like in this game, though, is Brandon Ayuk. 62.5 receiving yards. It's a little bit juiced right now at minus 130. I think you could even look to Ayuk in the alternate lines as well. I think you could go 100 plus for Ayuk today, a plus 320. He's already passed the 100-yard barrier in 4 games this year. You look at what the Eagles do. They play a lot of man coverage. Ayuk absolutely excels against man. He is great at creating separation. He is great at getting the ball in man coverage. Brock Purdy is a very efficient quarterback. I think Brandon Ayuk is absolutely going to ball out today, and I love his over. Like I said, I think you can play him alternate yards all the way up to 100 as well. It's not like he hasn't done this already this year. Sure, a little bit up and down with the production, but I think in this spot, he's set to excel.
Steve, A.J. Brown, do you expect a big game out of him today? I did notice when we were getting ready for the show yesterday, his prop was, I think, 73.5. Now it's 74.5, and it's juiced up over -125. So is that public money? Is that informed money? It's kind of hard to tell. But are we going to look at a big game today for A.J. Brown? Does Devonta Smith maybe the play? He's been cashing these overs. Or who are you going here for wide receiver?
Yeah, the thing with the Eagles, too, is that their offense is just so condensed right now. When you take Dallas Goedert out of the mix, it really comes down to Brown and Smith at this point, because you're going to struggle to run the ball with DeAndre Swift here today against a good running defense with the 49ers. So I would not be surprised if Brown went over this total, coming off that dud that he had last week, and then Devonta Smith getting there as well. For a prop that I like, this is a little bit, taking things a little bit different here. If you go to that Miami and Washington Commanders game on DraftKings Sportsbook, and you go to the weekly specials, there's one special on there. It's for both Tyreek Hill and Waddle to have 100 receiving yards. That's at plus 750. Now, I think this is a little interesting because the prop for Hill already is set at 100.5 yards, and that's at minus 130. So if you like Hill to go over, is there a shot that Waddle can do this as well? We have seen this happen already once this season with these two receivers. But I talk about a condensed offense. Hill and Waddle are combining for 51% of the total targets in that offense there. No one else even cracks double digits at this rate. So if you think that they're really going to blow up, which they can against this secondary for Washington, I think that's something that's worth a small play. It's just not a big play here by any means. But getting that at plus 750 to have both those guys go over when Hill already go over 100.5 receiving yards is at minus 130. I don't think that's a bad play there.
I like the call there. And again, just Sam, you look at Waddle over 66.5. You can play that as well, minus 120 to the over. I'll give you one more. DeAndre Hopkins, over 50.5 receiving yards today, minus 125 to the over. Remember, he played earlier this year against the Colts. He had 140 yards, so I like him to go over. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Steve. We're going to keep rolling here and break down the primetime games next. Are the Chiefs back on track? What will Mahomes and the offense do against the Packers? We'll talk about it all next on The Sweat.
Welcome back here to the Sweat, part of the pregame power-up here on DraftKings Network and VSiN. Steve Buchanan, Josh Applebaum. We're going to get into the two primetime games that we have here in Week 13. We got the Chiefs and Packers going tonight, and then tomorrow night on Monday, we got the Bengals and Jaguars. Josh and I are going to dive a little bit into both of those games, but first, let's hear a little from the Chiefs, Mahomes and Kelsey, on playing at Lambeau Field.
I've actually never got to play a game in general because the games that I've been there were the fourth preseason games. So I wasn't playing in the games, and so I'm extremely excited for it. I've watched it my whole entire life, and I know it's going to be a hostile environment, and the fans are going to be loud. It's going to be a lot like Arrowhead is to other teams, like you're saying. But I'm excited. If you love football, you love Lambeau Field, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to play there.
Well, everything right there around Lambeau is pretty cool too. The architecture, how you kind of get to the stadium is it's unique to anywhere else in the league. So there's that aspect, the history. You feel it when you're on that field, and obviously the Packers. It's a big time home field advantage for their fan base because how much they show up every single home game. So it's the times that I played there, it's been a crazy atmosphere, and I'm excited for this one.
Kelsey talking about architecture is not the thing I expected to be listening to here.
Trying to impress Taylor Swift.
Yeah, don't even start.
He's not just a jockey; he's also a scholar and a gentleman.
Don't even start bringing up that stuff. But the Chiefs' offense, Josh, finally put up some points in the second half. 17 points that we saw last week. This was a team that was averaging less than a touchdown in the second half. So, do we think that the Chiefs' offense is finally back on track?
I think it is definitely getting back on track, and it's funny. Remember going into last week, it was like, hey, they only scored like 6 points a game second half. I think the total was 13.5, I want to say, against the Raiders, and they go over that number. So it's always funny when something becomes popular, then sometimes you want to bet against that. Now, I think they're getting back on track just because of experience. I mean, Mahomes, obviously he got to rely on, Tyreek Hill and Kelsey. Kelsey's still here, but he's had to deal with a lot of these new wide receivers. So some of these guys, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, once you get more experience in the system and Mahomes becomes more comfortable with them, to me, that's an angle to really lean on this Chiefs offense. Again, you also lose, your offensive coordinator, Bieniemy. A lot of people are like, he doesn't really matter that much because you got Mahomes and Andy Reid. We could, you and I could be the OC and you're still going to put up points there. But I think that maybe it was something that they had to deal with or kind of get accustomed to early in the year. I think they're getting back to right where we expect them to be. I mean, they're shoo-in to win their division. They're minus 3,500. They're plus 190 to win the conference. I like their Super Bowl odds plus 425 because everyone's talking, obviously, the 49ers and the Eagles. And it's almost like, hey, do you remember who won it last year and still has Mahomes, the best QB in the world? It's the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mahomes is plus 380 for the MVP. Again, plus 425 to win the Super Bowl. I could target a couple of those right now. I think kind of they're lurking under the radar right now.
What's hilarious is that I gave out that second half under for that Chiefs-Raiders game at 20.5, landed on 20.
Attaboy.
Attaboy. Yeah, that's a little bit of a cast there. All right, let's talk about a bet for this game here. I like the under in this one. It's currently sitting at 43. These teams have been classic under teams. They combined to go 14-8 to the under so far this season. This total's been on the rise a little bit. On the look-ahead line last week, it was at 41, so now we're seeing 2 points going up in that direction to 43 here. But here's the thing. Both of these teams have been really strong against opposing quarterbacks, but both these teams can give it up on the ground. And we've seen the Chiefs kind of rely upon that run game more than we've seen in past years too. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco has been great for them in the run game. I'm still concerned about those second half numbers though for the Chiefs. I know that they put up 17 points last week and that was great. That was against the Raiders. This is a much better defensive team on the Packers side where that secondary has been so good all throughout the year. Even with those 17 points that they put up last week in the second half, they are still averaging 6.4 points in the second half. That is the second lowest in the league. And it is so surprising to hear that that's the Chiefs offense that is only putting up 6.4 points in the second half. So I'm going to take the under 43 in this game. What are you looking at for this one?
And by the way, you kind of mentioned the scoring defense. The question is, can they score enough? The Chiefs? Well, they don't have to. Their defense is so good this year. They're only giving up 16 points a game. So I think maybe you don't feel that pressure to put up 40 a game if you know your defense is going to back you. Now, Steve, I will never argue with a primetime under with you. So I'm with you on that one. Primetime unders, again, the Cowboys one flew over, but they're still 29-10, 74%. You have 71% of bets over, yet this total hasn't moved too much. So I do like that under. I'm going to go Green Bay Packers. I'm going Packers in this one. I
was leaning that. I was leaning that too, yeah.
I like the points in this one. This is right up my alley because we have the public all over Kansas City. The Chiefs are getting 80% of bets. When I go contrarian, it's a philosophy, it's a mindset, but you also want to focus on the most heavily bet games. NFL, all these games are heavily bet, but the primetime games are especially the most heavily bet. So the ticket count is the highest of any game today. Sunday Night Football, you have Mahomes, he mentioned it, going to Lambeau and playing for the first time. 80% on Chiefs. But the line is falling here to the Packers. That's what's most important to me, Steve. It opened around Kansas City -7. You're down to 6. Some books have even flirted with even going to 5.5. Like the juice has been further toward the Packers, not going back up toward the Kansas City Chiefs. Packers are playing pretty well right now. They've won 3 of their last 4. Jordan Love is playing much better. Kansas City, I know I kind of represented or kind of gave them respect for their future price right now, but they are 2-2 in their last 4. They're not rolling like we are accustomed to them last few years. And then lastly, a rest first tired angle. You have the Chiefs who played Sunday, extra rest for Green Bay. They played on Thanksgiving, had that big win over Detroit. Now you're at home. Public's all over Chiefs. Lions going to the Packers here. I'll go Packers +6. I really like this spot for Love at home.
And of course, Chiefs are going to be a very popular teaser play.
Oh, yeah.
Teaser leg this week at 6 as it currently stands. Prop bet for this one, I do like Pacheco to go over 66.5 rushing yards. We talked about there. The secondary for the Green Bay Packers has been stellar, where their run defense has not. They're allowing opposing backs to average 105 rushing yards per game. Pacheco is absolutely dominating in the carries in this Chiefs offense here. 50 carries over his last 3 games. This is by far the best matchup that he has drawn in quite some time here. So I love Pacheco to go over 66.5 rushing yards. What are you looking at for a prop in this one?
I mentioned him a second ago. I'm becoming a big Rashee Rice fan here, Steve. His over receiving yards tonight is 45.5. It's juiced up a little bit, -115. I like him to get you 46 or more. He's becoming a go-to target here for Patrick Mahomes. He kind of had his breakout game last week. He caught 8 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown. He was targeted 10 times. So I think, obviously, with Kelsey, even though he's your tight end, he's kind of your number one go-to pass catcher. But there's an opening here in the wide receiver core. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be one of these young players to step up? I think that's what you're seeing right now with Rashee Rice. He's gone over this number, 45.5, in 4 of his last 6 games. He's second on the team in targets with 56. Only Travis Kelsey has more. So I think there's a good angle here to back Rashee Rice before he gets too inflated and becomes really popular moving forward. Give me the over 45.5 receiving yards for Rice.
Bengals, Jaguars coming up on Monday. Let's hear from Trevor Lawrence and the confidence the Jaguars have after their run in the playoffs last year.
We also know you can't carry that over. It's not going to win games for you this year, but I think it is, there is some confidence that you carry with, what these games mean. And we know we were in this position or a different position, but in a position last year where, from the halfway point of the season on, every game was a must-win for us. And that was the sense of urgency in the field that we had. And so I think there's something to be said. And that's something we've talked about is keeping that every week, regardless of, maybe this year we're in a little bit of a better position because we started off the first half of the season better, but still keeping that same sense of urgency. They're all must-win games. Every game is huge. And it's about setting yourself up for the postseason and so on. So we understand that every game does matter. It really does, especially at the end of the season when everyone's fighting, scratching and clawing for these wins. We know the sense of urgency.
Just like every other athlete, every game is a must-win. Thank you very much for that. Let's talk about a game bet for this one here. I like the over in this one at 39.5. I got to give some credit to Jake Browning. I know this is not an ideal situation, but boy, he's got his full complement of weapons going in this game. He's going to get T. Higgins back in this one as well. He's had 2 tough matchups to start, as a starter, Baltimore and the Steelers. Those aren't easy games here. But when he's been working with a clean pocket, 72% completion rate, 7.7 yards per pass attempt, and 2 passing touchdowns. And then we're going to get, obviously, the normal offense here from the Jaguars. I'm surprised this is at 39.5, but I think it has a lot to do with how the Bengals have looked in the past 2 weeks. But again, 2 tough matchups. What do you expect?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Steve. We'll start with the spread in this one. Huge move here to the Jaguars. Yeah. They open -7. They're flirting with going to -10 right now. Books are kind of 9.5, 10 around that area. Again, let's see if we go through 10. Let's see if there's any buyback here. Jags look pretty sharp to me kind of in terms of a pro and Joe bet split. They're getting 69% bets, but 78% of the money. So it's not just the public saying, hey, no more Joe Burrow. Let's just automatically fade. Don't even think about it. Bet against the Bengals here. But again, it takes respected money to move a number. You can ask any odds maker out there. They're really not going to move numbers based on public betting. It's those respected bettors putting down wagers that the odds makers know and respect that they'll move that line. So it looks pro and Joe here in favor of the Jags. Now, I think you made a good point with the over here, Steve. but I am going to go under here. So
I knew
at
you would.
least one of us will cash
I
this
knew
bet.
you would.
I like this under for a couple of reasons. To your point, it has moved up a little bit. It was like 39 pretty much all week. I see some 39.5s out there. So if you like the under, you can get the hook. To Steve's point, late movement is going over a little bit. But my angle here is just all my system matches on the under. I mean, you look at primetime unders, as we mentioned. We saw the Cowboys game fly over, but they're still 29-10 on the year. If you look at a total that falls at least a half point, remember this thing opened as high as 41. Those unders are 62%. And I know this is kind of wonky because you don't have any more Joe Burrow, but both teams made the playoffs last year. They're playing each other. Take the under. That's 24-12, 67%. So I'll go under, and Steve, at least one of us will cash a ticket here.
Real quick, I'm going to give a prop bet here. I like Jake Browning to go over 1.5 passing touchdowns plus 200. That's a huge
payout.
number there, especially when you can't run against the Jaguars. All right, we're going to piggyback off a little Gojo and Golic. Our guys' discussion coming up is Stroud and Lawrence, the best in-division quarterback rivalry. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Back on the sweat on the heels of an AFC South matchup, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud last weekend. We're looking at some quarterback combinations. We talked to Gojo and Golick about some of the best in-division QB rivalries. Steve, let's see what they had to say.
Like in terms of sheer talent going into a matchup between two quarterbacks, who would it be for the number one pairing inside a division? Would it be Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow, or would it be Mahomes versus Herbert? Because it seems like that's got to be the conversation. I don't know if Tua and Josh Allen necessarily touch that one.
Mahomes and Herbert, if you want to just talk about talent or where can they lead their teams, because right now the Chargers have underachieved in that point. Now, Baltimore has gotten to the playoffs and has lost in the playoffs. Last year it was without Lamar Jackson. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And Cincinnati with Joe Burrow has gotten to the Super Bowl. So I think you do have to go on results. So I would put it more with Lamar and Burrow over Mahomes and Herbert, just because the Chargers haven't really gotten it done in the postseason. But as far as youth, I mean, the oldest remember, it's supposed to be Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, and it will be next year. The oldest quarterback in that league will be, as far as years in the league, is going to be Trevor Lawrence, who got into the league in 2021, right? I mean, 2021. Yeah. That's the oldest, that's the most tenured quarterback in that division.
I guess that's the sell for them, too, as far as if you were going to buy like one quarterback divisional rivalry. Because you've also got Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott in the AFC and the NFC East, Dak Prescott certainly much longer tenured in that conversation than Jalen Hurts, who is slowly, like, as far as the things we think about, Dad, from a narrative perspective, not saying from a football perspective, Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate last year. He played statistically the far better game of the two quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, and the other one's on track to be the greatest of all time in Patrick Mahomes. Like, Jalen Hurts is working his way with the fourth quarter comebacks, with being clutch, with how his teammates talk about him, into the best quarterback conversation in that tier below Patrick Mahomes in some people's minds. But in that division, too, that matchup with him and Dak is pretty tasty.
Steve, I can't believe they didn't go Bailey Zappi and Tim Boyle on us.
Oh, absolutely.
Best division quarterback combination there. I think they're right. I look at it in kind of two buckets here: your current and maybe your future best, combinations here. Obviously, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, they come to mind as just two great young players. But I'm looking at also current options here. I mean, Tua and Josh Allen, nothing wrong with that. Yep. In my opinion, Mahomes is great. Justin Herbert puts up stats, not much of a winner, but he's a pretty good QB. Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, another two great combinations there. But I think in the future, again, Lawrence, Stroud, these guys are super young. You expect them only to get better. What do you think, Steve? You're the guru when it comes to terrible quarterbacks. What about good QBs that you actually like? No Jimmy G mentions here. Who are you going with?
Well, that's the problem, too, is like if you just look at the overall landscape of the NFL right now, like where are the rivalries, right? Like you think about in years past, we've had Brady and Manning or whatnot. There just really isn't that right now because like the landscape is just changing and it's because of poor play, because of injuries. Like look, like if you go through a list of starting quarterbacks that were starting in week 1 and then look at what we have now in week 13. It is vastly different for a number of reasons, like with the Patriots, with the Raiders, with the Titans. Just like there's been so much overture that we've seen that like you don't even have time to start these rivalries. Like that AFC North right now probably has like the most consistent quarterbacks. You talk about Burrow and Jackson, but you're obviously not getting that this year because of the injury. So there's just a lot that it just doesn't even feel like there's a lot of rivalries that you're like, oh, this is a must-see matchup at this point. Like right now, I feel like a rivalry could be like Mahomes and Jalen Hurts because of what we just saw in past years. And if that continues and those guys continue and then on a collision course in the playoffs, like that's one that I'd be interested in. But as of right now, it just feels like it's just pretty stagnant in the NFL between injuries and poor play overall.
And I think you bring up a good point, too, like, looking at kind of the style of play. Like, we go back to the golden age of QBs. When we were a little bit younger, it was Brady, Manning, Drew Brees. You had these guys who, didn't really move a ton a lot. They didn't rush it, but they knew how to kind of just move in the pocket just to get open and make a throw. But we don't really have too many just stand-up, John Elway, Tom Brady, statue kind of quarterbacks who don't run it anymore.
Right.
In today's NFL, you got to be able to run the ball. That's why we're seeing such success with guys like Jalen Hurts and even Patrick Mahomes. He can throw it and run it. I mean, he's the best of both worlds. So I think just what the NFL expects out of quarterbacks, it's different today. You have to be mobile. You can't just throw the ball. And maybe we're seeing kind of just this new, it'll take a few years for these new quarterbacks that are dual threats to kind of come into the league and take the league by storm.
So last week we saw Lamar Jackson take care of the very underperforming Chargers, and luckily now for LA, they got the putrid Patriots. However, our resident GM, Michael Lombardi, could see a change in LA sooner rather than later.
Baltimore looked a little shaky, especially in that second half there. Like they were leaving that door wide open for the Chargers to go right through it, but the Chargers unable to do it. Ravens win 20-10 there. Not their best performance, but a win nonetheless as they go into the bye at 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, how many games this year have we seen the Chargers have the ball with a chance to win the game or tie the game, and they can't come through?
It's like every other week at least.
It's every week, right? I mean, it's like they constantly can't make a play when we need them to make a play. It's a killer. We got Miami. They had the ball. Tennessee, in overtime, they get the ball. The Dallas game, the Lions game, Green Bay, they had the ball last week. And then this week, like at some point, you can't make a play to win it. That's why, to me, everybody wanted the Chargers, and they're always in close games. I get that, right? They are. But they can't win a close game. Once that line went from 3.5 to 3, you had to take it, right? You had to take it because you had a chance to either push it or you're going to win it. Now, I know that everybody, you got lucky because Flowers ran the ball long. How many times does Justin Tucker miss a 44-yard field goal indoors? Seriously.
Never. I don't think I've ever seen it happen.
No, of course you don't see it happen. It doesn't happen. And so, I mean, look, they're not. The thing is, they're not out of it yet, even though they want to be out of it. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, when I watch the Chargers, they have no power to their team. They've had no power since he's been there. They don't play with any physicality as a team. They've got some good players, but when they have to throw it and they have to pass protect, or when they have to stop the pass, or when they have to pass rush, they're non-existent. That's why he's 23-22 as a head coach.
Yeah. It's sitting at 4-7 right now. Season's slipping away. I mean, it's pretty much already slipped away when you look at the AFC wild card. They're going to have to pull out a miracle, win the rest of their games, and get some help to get into the playoffs here. So maybe it's Brandon Staley that we see removed from post at season ends here for the Los Angeles Chargers.
All right, you'll hear more from Michael Lombardi coming up here after the sweat starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. But let's just talk about this Chargers team and what Brandon Staley is doing still as the head coach here. Like, it is baffling to me that they continue to run him out there week in and week out. When you have Justin Herbert, one of the premier quarterbacks in that 2020 draft, obviously very high draft pick, and you haven't been able to get him to click. And I think this is no fault of his own. I mean, sure, can you give him some of the blame? Of course. But, this is a team that was coming into the season. They revamped the defense. Okay, everything's going to click now. We got a new OC. We're going to release Justin Herbert. And it's been anything but that. For a team that's averaging almost 25 points per game, they're still 4-7. Well, they'll be 5-7 after today. But they are dead last in the AFC West. That is just so unbelievably unacceptable for that team that they continue to have Staley out there calling the plays.
I'm with you, Steven. I think his days might be numbered here. I mean,
they have to be numbered.
If he loses, I like the points because I'm just a terrible person who loves the pain of the Patriots +5 or 5.5 here today. But imagine if he loses to New England in a Bailey Zappi game and a team that's 2-9 with the Patriots. Again, the thing you got to look at here is the defense. You mentioned it. Herbert, the offense, there's really not an issue there. It's defensively. What's really ironic is that Staley's a defensive-minded guy, yet he just can't correct this defense. So, again, could he be the next head coach fired? It's probably pretty likely here. There are a bunch of prop bets. First head coach fired. Obviously, you had McDaniels, then you had Frank Reich. So, Staley survived this long, but I don't expect much of him moving forward. And really, to me, it comes down to, what are you going to do when Staley's gone? Who's going to take over? And
Anyone.
I'm going to give you a name. Bill Belichick. I think this is an angle here for Bill Belichick to get traded to the Chargers, maybe for a 4th-round pick. The one thing is Dean Spanos, the owner. I don't expect. I mean,
if Sean Payton was a 1st round, Bill Belichick's a 4th.
Again, he cost a ton of money. He's got a 1-year contract, I think, left at like $20 million. And then also, are you really you're paying him for future performance, not past performance? That's my angle when it comes to Belichick. But I think there's a couple angles here. One, you need a CEO-type coach who's going to kind of fix everything. Belichick's a defensive-minded guy. You want to fix a team that doesn't play any defense. Number 2, Steve, I'm going to joke around a little bit. Belichick likes the ocean. He's got a boat in Nantucket called 8 Rings. He gives himself 2 more rings for when he was a D coordinator there of the Giants. But I'm just looking, next to LA, you got some nice beaches here. You got Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, Venice Beach. I think there's an angle here for Belichick in his golden years to get traded to the Chargers, become the head coach, maybe get this team to more competitive situation, and then he can just hang out on the beach. He's going to be a long ride, though, in his boat to go all the way East Coast to West Coast. But I think there's an angle here to go to the Chargers.
You know who else has beaches?
Who?
Carolina.
Ooh, Myrtle Beach? What are you talking? Yeah, not bad.
But I will say, though, if there is a team that he should go to and succeed, I do think that the Chargers are that team. If he goes to the Panthers, which a lot of people have been talking about, you're basically taking one crap situation and moving to another one in Carolina because they just have a full revamp that they need to do over in Carolina. So I do think the Chargers are the likely landing spot here if they do trade Belichick. But, two teams facing each other, it could have, a little coach swap here.
And when you're 72 years old, do you want to completely rebuild everything from the beginning? I don't think so. Go to the Chargers. Anyway, wrapping up here to end the show here, we're going to talk some wide receivers. We're going to look at last-minute moves on Market Insights when we come back on The Sweat.
You're watching DraftKings Network's Sunday Pregame Power-Up.
Final block here on the Sweat. Steve Buchanan, Josh Applebaum. We're going to do a little rapid fire here. We're going to get into a few different topics here in this final block. We're going to start off here with one of my favorite segments here, cornering the market, kind of trying to expose some good matchups here for wide receivers going against some pretty poor cornerbacks. Starting off with that San Francisco 49ers and Eagles game. Brandon Ayuk going up against James Bradbury here today. Bradbury, 11.8 yards per reception allowed, 7 touchdowns scored against him as well. That is the highest in the league, tied with 2 other players in the league right now, Tyreek Stevenson with the Bears and Jordan Whitehead with the Jets. Then you have Ayuk, who is averaging 3.1 yards per route run. That is second highest in the league, trailing only Tyreek Hill, who is going over 4 yards per route run in this one. I know, Josh, you talked about this a little bit here, but Brandon Ayuk just in a smash spot here against the Eagles.
I think so. You're totally right, Steve. 62.5 receiving yards, over is -130. Again, the reason why I always mention the juice, it's not just, hey, that's the price you got to pay. But I mentioned this before. I actually like juiced up prop bets because I think you basically the books are kind of pulling back the curtain and letting you know which direction the move might go next, and also where the liability is. So I'm looking at this game. You have a lot of wide receivers who are juiced up, San Fran and the Eagles. So do your homework. Pick the one that you feel you have the best edge on. But A.J. Brown, 74.5, over -125. Just mentioned Ayuk getting juiced up.
Yep.
Also, you look at Deebo Samuel, 49.5, over, -130. Then you have George Kittle, 46.5, over, -125. So a lot of options here. Could be a higher scoring game. You have 2 teams that average like 28 points a game. Again, I like the 49ers money line to win that game. It's just kind of a fade the trendy dog play. But Devonta Smith, I mean, he's just been cashing these tickets last few weeks. I think the angle with Smith is that obviously you're going to try to stop A.J. Brown and put a lot of focus on A.J. Brown. But if you cover and double Brown, that leaves open Devonta Smith, and he's really feasted last couple weeks here. But either way, Steve, a lot of these pass catchers are getting juiced up, so pick the one you like the most in this game.
One more I'll bring up here too. Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against Alontae Taylor in that Lions and Saints game. St. Brown actually has one of the highest catch rates in the league amongst qualified receivers. He's at 78% catch rate on the year when getting passes there from Jared Goff. Taylor over 10 yards per reception, a 67% reception rate, so just love that spot here. Then another prop, we talked about it earlier in the show here, but I'm just going to bring this up one more time in that Dolphins and Commanders game, getting both Hill and Waddle to go over 100 receiving yards. Like I mentioned, Tyreek Hill's receiving yard prop for this game currently sits at 100.5 yards. The over juiced up to -130. So can we get Waddle to get to 100 receiving yards as well against one of the worst secondaries in the league in the Washington Commanders? I like this one here. It's at +750. Again, this is a small play here. This is not a big play by any means, but on DraftKings Sportsbook, you go into that game, go to the weekly specials. It is right there, fresh on the field is what they call it. Give me that one there. I think that is just a really cool play here, especially if you already like the over for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, pizza money play, Steve. I think that's what we call it. $5 bet here, see if you can cash bigly. Speaking of the Commanders game, I'll give one more for you. Curtis Samuel, he kind of caught my eye a little bit because he's only 35.5 receiving yards at -115 to the over. Kind of like the over here. I mean, he blew up last week against Dallas. He had 12 targets, 9 catches, 100 yards. Prior to that, he had 2 really low games where he only caught 1 catch for 5 yards, 2 catches for 6 yards. But obviously this is a play, kind of a game script play for me when it comes to Curtis Samuel because similar spread. You know, they're a huge dog here against the Dolphins. You're a big dog against Dallas. If you get down big in the game and you're down 14 points in the fourth quarter, Sam Howell, maybe not a ton of a pass rush. You get some garbage yards. Can Samuel get you over that number, over that 35.5? I think it's doable. I like Samuel over 35.5.
All right, let's talk about some market insights here. This is obviously your wheelhouse here. Since we started the show, nothing has really changed too much here. When we did start, obviously, Dolphins were down to 8.5 going against the Commanders. That Lions-Saints game has gone up to 48 now. The over continue to goes up there. I don't understand that at all, but what can we learn here from some of the movement that we've seen from this morning?
Yeah, so aside from just getting updates here, remember, game day movement or game day steam. Steam is when you have an overload of sharp action in one direction, causes the entire market to move. Really notable on game day, again, because that's when limits are raised and the big bets come in. So a couple updates here. You mentioned that Saints game, that total is rising. Again, 47.5 up to 48. Interestingly, that game we talked about to start the show was a teaser play for me on the Saints 4.5 up to 10.5. Well, you're coming back down a little bit. All those 4.5 seem to be coming back down to New Orleans +4. So it tells me, even though this is a really unpopular bet with the Saints, they're only getting 19% of bets. Everyone's going with the Lions here, yet you're seeing that 4.5 get down to 4. Again, coming off a hook, too, is also notable because there's a lot of teaser money on the line, a lot of back and forth here, depending on what number you get. This one is going to make you so disgusted, Steve, but I got to mention
You've done it many times on the show already.
Carolina Panthers. They're probably not going to cover because they never cover. They're 2-7-1 ATS. But if you tell me like Carolina, you're a very, very, I would say, brave person, but you also have the market in your favor. I mean, we started this show, Steve, pretty much painted across the board. Every book was Tampa Bay -3.5. A lot of these books are down to 3. So for whatever reason, I know it's a divisional matchup. Maybe you're fire your coach, come back, play well the next week. That's an angle that a lot of bettors look at with the Tabor taking over for Frank Reich. So there is a little bit of movement here toward Carolina. Packers game, which I'm on the Packers +6.
Yep.
That total just ticked up a little bit, Steve, 42.5 up to 43. Again, it's hard for me to go against these primetime under angles. Did see the Cowboys game go over, but still, that's like 75% overall. Then one last one for you, Browns and Rams. This one, we were doing the tic-tac-toe yesterday.
Yep.
I couldn't believe that there was some smart money going over in that game. You saw that one as like 37.5 up to 40.5. Well, maybe we're starting to see the buyback number here for the under because those hooks, we started the show, that total was Cleveland Rams 40.5. It's down to 40. So again, it's falling down a little bit here. So whole point being, I don't think you want to chase these moves, but if you can identify the juice, see which direction it's going, and pay attention and respect that game day steam, hopefully it can help you cash a bet.
And just talking about some of the betting splits here, talking about some of the more popular public plays that we have going today. Chargers -4.5 is getting a lot of love. The Lions at -4, 81% of the handle, 80% of the bets is another one. The Dolphins, of course, at -8.5, 80% of the handle, 78% of the bets. But again, you think that's more of a good thing for the Commanders, at least in this spot.
I think so. Again, the line coming back to the Commanders, we almost got to 10, down to 9.5, down to 9. So again, is that a situation where, the Dolphins are up, 14, 16, 17, something, you get a backdoor cover, something to keep an eye out for? I just got to keep going back to the Patriots, man, just to annoy you as we end the show.
Yeah, of course.
Got all the way up to 6. Again, reminds me a lot of that Georgia and Alabama game from yesterday where Georgia was the popular bet. They were 3.5 up to 6. Hit 6, a lot of buyback came back to Alabama. Alabama wins the game outright. I think it's an angle here for New England. As bad as they are, you're never going to buy lower on the Patriots than you are right now. But you mentioned those bet splits, Steve. 81% of bets are going Chargers. This is just you talk to your buddy at the bar, give me an obvious winner that's a guarantee, that's a lock. There's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock, but they'll probably tell you, fade the Pats. The Pats stink. But what's the market doing? It's coming back here. 81% of bets Chargers, but this was as high as 6. You're down to 5.5, 5. I see a couple 4.5s out there. Maybe it tees up the Patriots. I think it's an angle here where maybe Zappy, and you saw in the locker room, I think the players were like, thank God no more Mac Jones, no more Pea Shooter Jones. Maybe Zappy gives them a spark. I like the points of the Patriots today and the under.
There is going to be no spark that's going to be had with Bailey Zappi under center. Let's just make that perfectly clear.
He does what the coaches tell him to do, right, though? Hey.
Oh, congratulations. We all do that. I mean, they tell me to be here.
Except Mac Jones, he calls his college coach and complains about his current head coach.
2 bumps.
Never cross Belichick.
I will say, though, about that Dolphins-Commanders game, that does open up a teaser possibility for the Dolphins, getting them down through 3, getting them down to 2.5 here, because we talked about some of the teaser legs, obvious teaser legs here, getting the Steelers down to basically win, and then same with the Chiefs here, because they're both at 6 and 6.5. So now you can tease down to the Dolphins, getting them through that key number of 3. So I think that's something that you could also look at as well. I'm probably going to be doing that to myself. Okay, let's talk about our no sweat bets here for today. Our favorite plays for the week. What do you got?
49ers. Can't wait to watch this game. Could be an NFC championship game preview. Obviously, you have a lot of back and forth here between, who's the best team in the NFC. It was Eagles much of the year, best record here, but the odds makers tell you it's San Francisco. I think this is a good spot to back the 49ers. Now, again, this is a money line play for me. The reason why money line short favorites is to protect yourself from maybe a short win where you either push or don't cover, yet you would have won if you money lined. So think of it this way. If you're laying a 3 on San Francisco, they win by 3, you push. I want to win my bet. -155 on the money line. 60% of bets are on the Eagles, but this was a pick'em game. It's moved up to San Francisco. Wise line going to 49ers. If everyone loves the Eagles, give me 49ers in a rest spot. Steve, what's your no sweat bet?
I can't believe that this total continues to climb. I'm going to continue to take the under in this game between the Lions and the Saints here. I mean, sure, the Lions have been one of the better teams at going over. They're 7-4 to the over, covering by an average of 4 points here, but I can't get over how this Saints offense is just really banged up right now. Olave is going to be playing. He did get cleared. Looks like he's going to be playing here, but really there's not much after that. And Alvin Kamara is going to really have a tough time getting it going on the ground. This is one of the better run defenses in the league with the Lions here. I don't see where the points are going to come from the Saints. Sure, can the Lions put up points? Sure, but I don't think it's going to be coming here from the Saints. That's going to do it here for this Week 13 edition of The Sweat. The Lombardi line is coming up next here as the pregame power-up on VSiN and DraftKings Network continues. Thanks for joining us. For Josh Applebaum, I'm Steve Buchanan. We will see you next week.